Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Shir Likutey Moharan. We have started Torah 28, Chavches, and we're basically in the second or third session. So we'll just very quickly go through. We're holding by Seif base. In Seif Aleph, the whole thing is based on the debate between one of the questions and answers of the sages of Athens and Rabbi Shua ben Hanania. And this time, more is being revealed. Rabbi Shua ben Hanania is sort of like taking out the sword out of the scarab. They tell him, build us a house suspended in midair. So he said a name, one of the holy names, and there's a house. I'm sorry. So he said a name, and he himself floated up, to call levitated, and was standing there in midair. And he told them, now bring me bricks and mortars from where you are to where I am. So they said, how is it possible for anyone to bring up brick and mortars up to the air? So he tells them, so how can there be anybody who can build a house in midair? That's, the very mysteriously opaque story. And the Rebbe starts, very powerfully, and he says, those who go against and degrade those who Yireh Hashem, this is because they receive Torah from sages that are actually what the Zohar actually calls Jewish demons. Shin Dal Yehudi. It says because why they're getting called that name is because they received their Torah through the demons. It's a kind of klipos, it's a kind of a semi-spiritual being that are somewhere between the level of malachim, which are completely spiritual, and the level of people that are completely physical. And the shefa, when a person learns Torah, the Torah is emanating from what they call the Alphin Elohim, the supernal Aleph letters. The letter Aleph is the very beginning of everything. But Aleph is shown Alufa Shaloilam, the prince of the world, the champion of the world, the Shon Aleph. Aleph is Inyan of Echad. And from these Alophim, Shlomo HaMelech got his Torah directly, and he says, V'daber 3,000 moshel, and he spoke 3,000 proverbs, Vayishiroi Chamisha ve'elef, and his songs were 1,005. It means that every single pasuk the Shlomo HaMelech would say, whether it's in Mishlei or Koheles or anything, every pasuk has embedded in it 3,000 parables and 1,005 reasons. Every pasuk. So we see that in the Torah that Shlomo Melech got from Shloshes Alofim, the three Alephes, the 3,000, because Aleph is also a Loshon of 1,000, Aleph is 1,000, because Shlomo Melech got his Torah from Kedusha, so that's why his Torah had this attribute that it was full of proverbs and full of reasonings. Now, proverbs are very, very, very special tools because when you give a mashal, when you give a proverb, a parable, when you give a parable, what you do is you can explain a very, very subtle and complicated principle by simplifying it. What it is that you do is when you take a very abstract principle and you try to explain it in that reality, it is sometimes can be very difficult, if not impossible, to actually understand what it means. But when you take the guiding principle behind any kind of learning, any kind of seichel, and you present it as a parable, suddenly the mind of a person makes the connection between the parable, the mashal, and the nimshal, that thing that you are comparing it to. And suddenly you understand the principle behind the nimshal that without the parable will be impossible to understand. Give me an example. Rabbeinu says in Torah Chaf Aleph that when a person receives sechel b'chinas kedem, and it comes to a person b'shefa eloki with a divine influx, a divine bounty, just pours in. He says that excites the heart, and the heart burns to a Kodesh Baruch Hu, and you don't have to go through all the efforts of getting yourself excited about davening and about learning, about Kedusha and so forth and so on. So how can you explain that? How can you explain this metzius of you have a seichel that comes in one fell swoop, and it makes the heart, it inflames the heart to Avodas Hashem. It sounds like something very arbitrary. Okay, so you said that's the way it is. Okay, I believe you, that's the way it is. But why is it so? I mean, it seems like something that is very foreign, very difficult to understand. But then you can take a parable and explain it through a parable. And you are saying, let's say somebody tells a joke, tells a joke. One time, the lion was getting married, and he invited obviously all the animals. The lion's getting married, all the animals come. And the mouse, the field mouse, also came. And he came to the wedding, takes out his checkbook, routes out a check, and turns it off and gives it over to the lion and say, "Here you go, my brother, Mazel Tov." So the lion becomes very upset. Since when am I your brother? So the mouse answers, "Before I was married, I used to be a lion also." So when you hear the joke, obviously it's very funny. So there's one slow person that, he doesn't get things on the spot. So he says, "I don't understand. What's the joke about?" So they explain it to him step by step. Here's a lion, and a lion gets married, and there's no such thing really as a married by lion, but we're using here, you have to suspend your disbelief so we can tell you a joke. Okay, I got that. All right. And now comes the mouse. Well, usually a mouse will come to a lion, I'll eat it up. No. This, in the process of the joke, being that it's like, so you can imagine that the chasana looks like a chasana hall in Ulamei Gutnik, and the mouse can come together with his missus, and she goes to Ezra Snashim, and the mouse goes to Ezra Gvarim, and so it's just to make believe. You just say, okay, go ahead, and he explained. And when you explain it to him step by step like this, and how can a mouse have a check? It doesn't have a checkbook, has a bank account, whatever it is. And at the end, when you finish explaining the entire joke, so the person says, okay, I got everything, but there's one thing I didn't get. When do you start laughing? What's his problem? His problem that when you explain a joke, it's like you are dissecting a frog. You know more, but the frog is dead. When you explain a joke, you may know more details, but it's not funny anymore. It's not funny because you got the pieces one at a time. So by the time you explain, the joke is that, it's not that he was a lion, but, people, before they get married, they speak, they think themselves as lions, but once they get married, they really realize, what's going on, and so forth and so on. So, but what happens is, when is a joke funny? A joke is funny when you go through the entire story of the joke, and at the end, you get suddenly the whole thing makes sense in one fell swoop. This is when I was, before I was married, I was also a lion. Bam, you get the whole thing in one shot. One shot, it bursts. You burst out laughing. This is a mashal that explains why when you get the whole Sechel Eloki in one fell swoop, the heart explodes is inflamed the very same way that you explode with laughter, because you get the whole thing at once. This is how a mashal is working. Now, this in and of itself is a very, very deep thing, because you have to understand what the seichel is. You have to understand what's the most important seichel that is running through. What's the principle that's running it. You have to find a story that really pairs off all the other details that are not negeya, that are not germane to the principle you're trying to explain. And when you tell the story, the mouse, the lion, suddenly, you see the punchline. And because the punchline arrives, now you get the whole story and you understand what the Nakuda is in one fell swoop. It's funny. The heart is driven to laughter. The same now you understand when you're talking about the Secher Eloki that comes, because it comes in one shot, it's not piecemeal. So the heart bursts out with fire to Islavas Avodas Hashem. To be able to do that is an art all its own, the art of telling Mishalom. Shlomo Melech, on every single pasuk in the Torah that he said, had 3,000 Mishalom and 1,005 reasons to Amim. He got a B'Kedusha. But these Talmidei Chachamim, those that are, they are called Jewish demons. They get their Torah not directly from the Kedusha. They get their Torah, it comes from the Alofim, the supernal olives. Just like this, there's no other place to get the Torah. But before it gets to them, it goes through the demons, the realm of the demons, the Chitzonium. So their Torah becomes tainted. So Rabbeinu says, because their Torah comes from these supernal olives, even though it comes through the demons, the Torah that they say is full with mishalim, with beautiful melitzas, with jokes and with reasonings, and you sit there and you go, it's geschmack. So you say, what's wrong with that? Okay. The answer is that because they receive that the Torah they get their Torah through the Shin Dalet, the people that listen to their Torah, they become infected with apicorsis, with heresy. How's that? So Rabbeinu brings a pasuk, "Me'at mikem." Is it not enough for you, halois anoshim, to tire out people? Kisalu gam elokim. You are making Kadosh Baruch Hu weak as well. What does it mean? It means Rabbeinu says the people that come to listen to drashos of the Nechachom, of rabbis, they come there in order to get tayelas v'avodas Hashem. You come there because you want to serve Kadosh Baruch Hu. If you want to be entertained, you can buy yourself a ticket, to a ball game, or I don't know what. Why are you going to Torah? Because you want to serve Kadosh Baruch Hu. But being that the Torah that these Talmidei Chachamim have has come to them through the demons, the effectiveness of getting a person close to Kadosh Baruch Hu through this Torah is lost. All that's left is these beautiful mishalim, these beautiful inyanim, and reasons and mashal, just like Keviyochel, like Shlomo Melech. But it's barren. It does not bring people close to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Rabbeinu explains, when people come to hear Torah from Talmidei Chachamim, which are Jewish demons, they become tired. What do they become tired? They become disillusioned. They want to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but the lectures that they hear don't bring them close to Kadosh Baruch Hu. It doesn't get them there. So they become disillusioned They become tired, that you tire out people. But that's not the worst of it. The worst of it is that you are as if you're tiring out Kodesh Baruch Hu. In other words, the fact that, you're doing what you need to do. You go to Shir Torah and you listen to the lecture, and you know whatever it is that you hear, you need to hear, you hear. But you come to get Toyelas in Avodas Hashem, and you don't. So you're starting to get this deep-seated suspicion. You can't even put into words, as if HaKadosh Baruch Hu cannot help those who want to come close to him. Yeah, you're doing it. You're going to Shir Torah. You're listening to this beautiful, but the Zel B'Shei gets v'amol. You're the same bum you used to be. Nothing helps. You haven't changed. So it throws in this poison of apikoros that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't really notice me. He doesn't really care. He can't really help me get close to him. And because of that, of this apikoros, they see people that Ayir Shemaim, they're serving Kodesh Baruch Hu, and they degrade them, they laugh at them. It says, what are you doing? You just, you're like, you're talking to an imaginary friend. You just, the whole thing is, and they're putting them down. That's because they listen to a Torah that has arrived through the demons, the realm of the demons. It's beautiful Torah. It's filled with Mishalim. It's filled with Chazalim. It's filled with Tamim. It feels, sounds like a Shmak. But you don't become a Reshemam even a Yoda more. That drives a person eventually to put down the real Talmidei Chacham. This is B'chinas Avodah Zarah. They shamed them. They shamed the true Yerushalayim. So now we're holding by Sif Best. Until now, this was Sif Aleph. Sif Beis, and he says, and when those who fear Hashem has shame and degradations from these koifrim, from these heretics, Eitzelze, the advice to counter it is Anoichi Tolas velo ish cherpas odom. In Tehillim, it says, I am like a worm, not like a person. Cherpas odom, I'm a sad excuse for a person. Because for degradations and shame, the segula for us is a bechinus of toilo. Toilo is bechinus emuna. There's also a very, very strong klipas called toilo. But b'kedusha, toilo, everything has also in kedusha and in tumah. So the din of toilo, of making oneself like a worm. A worm is something that is soft. It doesn't have any koyach. It doesn't have any power. The only power that a worm has, a worm has a power in its mouth. It can eat its way through things, but there's no skeleton. It's just mush. As good the b'china stoilo shel day b'china azois v'netzech oivo. Through, when a person takes upon himself that quality of toilo, of a worm, as it were, he can win over all his adversaries. Rabbeinu ki toilo, because a toilo is b'chinas emuna. Toilo it means emuna, emunim ale toilo. Those who are used to toilo. The pshat of the pasuk over there, the Navi is saying, the Navi is telling Am Yisrael, you think you're getting away with murder, but the end is going to be very bitter. He says, and all the people that are used to wearing clothes of silk and clothes that of crimson, both silk and crimson use substances that are produced by worms, right? So munim ala Torah, those who are used to, who are pampered in clothing and fancy clothing of colors and silk, are going to meet a bitter end. But in it is also another remez. Amunim l'shoin emuna ala Torah. The Torah, that worm, is a b'chinas emuna. In other words, a person needs to believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem Yisbarach, and be mevatel himself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'lios b'chinas Torah v'lo ish. Person needs to be like, I'm a worm, I'm not a person. I'm not, be a man. I don't want to be a man. Stand for yourself. I don't want to. Show him what for. I don't want to show him what for. Give him an answer. Put him down. I don't want to give him an answer. I don't want to put him down. I'm not interested in getting into any altercations. But I need Torah v'lo ish. And this is very, very important, especially. We said it many, many times. That the only way for a person to withstand any kind of adversarial relationship is through being samich in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and being a Torah, being soft, just I'm a mushy thing. Not because you're appeasing someone, it's because you trust HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing is good. That being a Torah that is totally bottled to Kadosh Baruch Hu is a b'china of Avram. Shurosh l'ma'aminim is the head, or the originator of all those who believe in Kadosh Baruch Hu. K'mo shekoser about Avram Avinu ve'emin b'Shem. Shavei Tzedakah. It's in this. It's in the parsha that in Brisbane and Besarim. B'chinas Avram shu b'chinas Emuna. And when a person is in the b'china of Avram, a b'china of Emuna, person breaks down and is mevatel the idol worshipping, the heresies and the bizyonis, and he overcomes the avodas salilim, and he overcomes all the heretics. That's what it says. Bigvurois yeshe yaminoi. Yaminoi is, how do you get the Yeshua? How do you get the deliverance over the Gvurais? It's through the Yemina. The Gvurais, you're standing in Gvurais, the people are standing over you, they're putting you down, they're diminishing you, they're degrading you, denigrating you, whatever. The Yesha is Yemina, is Avram, B'chinas Avram, Avram, B'chinas Chesed, B'chinas Emuna. This is HaKadosh Baruch Hu told the Zer of David HaMelech. V'chasdei lo asir v'lo ashaker b'emunosi. I'm not going to remove my chesed from him, and I will not do a sheker chas v'chalila in my emuna. In other words, the emuna is b'chinas chesed, and chesed is yamin, as everybody knows. B'yamin azois, and with this right, this chesed, this b'chinas of Avram, this b'chinas of emuna, v'misgaber aloivav, he overtakes his adversaries. You are in a state of gvuros. All of a sudden, you're surrounded with enemies, with adversaries. The way to overcome all the adversaries is the yesha yaminoi. The yesha comes in the yaminoi. The kinaseh b'chinas anshechayil metuloim becomes, that in Nachum, he says the heroes of Israel. He says they're called Anshe Chayil, men of war. He says Metuloim. Where he says Amunim ala Torah, those who are used to be dressed in fancy clothing, colored clothing. What are the men of war doing with fancy clothing? Over here, Nachum and Novi is talking about a different kind of coloring. He says their colors will be colored from the blood of all their adversaries that they will kill, like the color crimson that comes from the worm. That color is red. But as we know, in the level of Remez, that's the pshat. The level of Remez takes it one step further, that through the Torah, the person becomes a Ishchayil. When a person takes this enough Torah, he becomes a hero. He becomes a man of war to overcome his enemies, his adversaries. Chesed, and it's that chesed, umesaken elo alpha and nefulim. He's actually fixing and elevating these fallen olives that we said before. Those olives from where the Talmidei Chachamim, Jewish demons, received their Torah, and which caused the heresies, which caused the bizyonis. With this, you bring a tikkun. When you get the emunah, you bring it and you elevate the olives. B'fchinas ve'oiseh chesed la'alofim. You're doing chesed, that when you have emunah, you're doing chesed to the alofim that fell down through the learning of the Torah of these Talmidei Chachamim Shedim Yudayim. It's we also learn the same very similar principle in Torah Yud Beis. Why do Talmidei Chachamim the Lomdim that going against the tzaddikim? Is because they take, it's this very, very similar principle. In other words, if you realize that they come, these heretics come, and they put you down, they degrade you, it's because there's something there to needs to be fixed. They had Torah, that the Torah itself was toxic. It's a Torah, that the Torah has two powers. So Sam Chaim and Sam Amavis. A potion of life, or Chas v'Chalil, a poison. And when a person learns Torah, a poisonous Torah, what happens is that it influences the people receive from him. They turn around to the people of Yerushalayim and they put them down. So when a person looks at it from the side and he says, I don't understand it, that's unfair. Why do the Yerushalayim have to suffer because some Talmid Chacham got his Torah through, the Shindala, the demons, and that person, he wanted to know about it, and it drove him to heresy. And now he comes to the Yerushalayim and he puts him down and he shames him. Why is it Yerushalayim's fault? The answer is, when you become a Pchinas Torah, when you become a Pchinas Amunah, it means that you believe that whatever is happening to you is coming to you from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. There's a big tikkun. What you're doing is that damage that was done, the bringing down of the incredibly subliminal alafim, they're brought down through the learning, the faulty learn of Torah of these Talmidei Chachamim, by you behaving with the munu, avoiding the fight, just staying back and have nothing to do with that. You are elevating the inner alofim that is in there. We saw this in Parshas Vayera. Parshas Vayera, the common denominator of Parshas Vayera is there's a lot of seeing. Hashem is seen to Abraham. Abraham sees the three Malachim, and Hagar sees a Malach, and afterwards she runs away. She doesn't see the well, And the Malach says, okay, and he shows her, now she can see the well. And afterwards, there's a Kedas Yitzchak, and Avram sees the mountain, like from afar, and he tells Ishmael and Eliezer to stay there with the donkey, and he says, me and Yitzchak, I'm going to go alone. Yitzchak is carrying the burning wood, and Yitzchak is saying to Rav Avinu, Father, and he says, yes, my son. He says, here are the woods, and we have the fire. But where is Ayeh Sela Oila? Where is the lamb for the sacrificial lamb? Avram Avinu tells him, Elokim Yireh Sela Oilam Bni. Hashem will see what is the proper Sela Oila. He will see what the Sela Oila. The Medrash says he told him, because either Kadosh Baruch Hu is being a Sela Oila, or you are the Oila. Yitzchak accepts it and goes together with it. And at the end, after the Malach comes, he says, don't touch him, whatever. And he says, and Avram Avinu says, from now on, it says, Bahar Hashem Yiroeh. In a mountain, Hashem will be seen. Throughout the whole parsha is seeing. What is this? The answer is, the big nisayon of Yitzchak was not the fact that he was told to take Yitzchak as a sacrificial lamb, and he took him. That's not the nisayon. Avram Avinu is. The whole thing started with him willingly being thrown into a fire, a pit of fire, the Ur Kasdim. Avram Avinu is in a madrega that, that's not the nisayon. The nisayon was that Hashem told him, "Yitzchak yikorech hazara." In Yitzchak, your offsprings, everything that I promised you, will come through Yitzchak. Then HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to him, "Go ahead and bring him as a sacrificial lamb." The real nisayon was that Avram Avinu has never ever stopped to say, whoa, time out, just a minute. Something doesn't work here. It doesn't stim, it doesn't fit. On one hand, you say that my offspring will be from Yitzchak. On the other hand, you say, bring him as a sacrificial lamb. The two cannot coincide together. But so what is the state of mind of Avram Avinu that Rabbeinu is saying here? The Pchinas of Avram. It's more than just the fact that he believed. But I believed. But there's a svara that we can understand here. And the svara is, there is a sight that I see. This is what I see. And there is a sight that Kadosh Baruch Hu sees. Which sight do you trust? A person that doesn't have emunah trusts his own eyes. Groucho Marx once said, who you're going to believe, me or your own lying eyes? That's it. The idea is that usually people trust their eyes. Says, I'm sorry, it doesn't make sense. How are these things going to come together? It's impossible. And then there is the sight of Hashem. The Pasha before, HaKadosh Baruch Hu yearns for the tefillah of tzaddikim. So he tells Avram Avinu, listen, I'm going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. So Avram Avinu starts davening. and he davens and he davens and he davens and he davens, the back and the forth. And if you have 50 tzaddikim, 45 tzaddikim, 40 tzaddikim, 30 tzaddikim, 20 tzaddikim, whatever, and Simsof, it doesn't help. Sdom is being destroyed. So why did the Kodesh Baruch Hu want the tefillah from Avraham Avinu? Kodesh Baruch Hu knew that at the end, this tefillah won't work. It's not going to save Sdom anymore. So why Kodesh Baruch Hu craves the tefillah of tzaddikim? What's going on? The answer is that when you look in human eyes, you see that supposedly the tefillah did not work. But when you see the eyes of Kodesh Baruch Hu, it worked a lot, because Kodesh Baruch Hu saved Lot through the tefillah of Avram, and from Lot, what happened is that comes Amon and Moav, from them comes Mashiach. So there is a human insight, and there is a godly insight. Avraham Avinu says, Avraham Avinu does not bother himself with trying to settle the paradox of, my offspring will 3 Yitzchak, not 3 Yitzchak, the sacrifice hasn't going to work. This is all human sight. He says, Elokim yire lo yasel oilo bni. Hashem, I'm trusting the godly sight, not my sight, not the human sight. That's the basis of Emunah. I trust the Kadosh Baruch Hu. See, the Kadosh Baruch Hu knows what he's doing. Kenai Nahara. He's been at this job for quite a long time. He knows pretty well what he's doing. I'm gonna, go with the winner. I trust him. That is the shurish when you are being a toiler, when you're being like a worm, you're being pushed around, as it were. You're not being pushed around because you are a 90-pound weakling. Because you're a sissy, because you're a nobody, you're a pushover. No. You're being nidcha because you trust what Hakadosh Baruch Hu sees fit to do this, and I should be degraded. B'vakasha and baya. I probably deserve it, but whatever it is, I'm being cleaned out. Whatever it is, as the Rebbe says, at great length in Teravav. And what you don't know, that in the meantime, you're fixing the damage of that the Torah of the Talmidei Chachamim, the Jewish demons, has wrought to the Alafim Elohim. By just by believing, just accepting it. That's it. Just going along. That's it. No more. You don't have to make kavanas. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do that. You don't need any of that. You're just going with the Emunah. I'm trusting Elokim Yirah Shel Oil Bni. That's it. I don't need any more. Not only you're going to overcome your adversaries, but you're also going to fix the Torah. So Oisachad Alafim. Ad Kan, Bezat Hashem, Akofe Aleph, Likutey Moharan for tonight. Mitzvah Hashem to tomorrow in the Beis Medrash at 8:00. Kol Tov and Atzlacha b'chol ha'inyonim.